Okay, so this is the analysis PowerPoint for the mother's death scene. So you need to make sure you have your scene analysis handout in front of you, whether you've got that written on or not. There may be some things you can add to your previous analysis. And you also need to make sure that you pause the video and watch the scene before you do the analysis so it makes sense for you. So those clips are shared with you from my OneDrive. They should be in your school email somewhere, so you should be able to watch all the ones we have watched together. So make sure you watch the scene before you get started here. So here's our first technique. So remember, we follow the what, how, why formula for analysis. So what is it showing? How is it showing it? Why is it showing it? So our first technique here is composition. So remember, when we say composition, it's how everything is laid out in the shot, how the color, the characters, the setting, everything. So what are we looking at here? Well, we've got Rachel, the mother, walking towards us. She's just paid her loan and she's walking to the bus. And we can see above her this Weiss Time Lenders sign. So that's where she's paid the money to, paid the loan to, and that's the bank. Okay, Weiss Time Lenders, like a loan shark, basically. So what we're understanding here, what we can get from this is that that kind of timekeeping loan shark really controls these people in this district. Really, the time lending and needing to pay back loans and things really dominates the people that live in this area. But how do I know that? Well, I know that because the composition of the shot, the fact that that sign is directly above her head, is very significant. So it almost suggests that could be almost always on her mind. It could be keeping her down, so stopping her from moving up. It's a very specific decision to have her underneath that sign. So why is that important? Why should we understand that? Well, we can see that people that live in this district and in the poorer areas of society are very limited from what they can do from outside influences. Like we've talked about many times, it's not just about the choices that people make, it's what choices are available to certain people in society. So this composition really shows us how the people in this district are really dominated by the higher levels of society and this time lending and this loan shark business and the control of time. So our next one is a combination of using close-ups and dialogue. So Rachel's just getting on the bus, and the bus driver tells her that that it's more expensive, so she can't afford it. She says, I only have an hour and a half. And he says, well, then you better run. So we have these close-ups of her clock and her face, and then the bus driver's face as he turns away. So what are we understanding from this? Well, it's really showing the desperation, so the desperate times of for these people in these areas, how prices change daily for no reason, it seems, and they have no options. They have no choices here, and it's quite devastating because if it's going to cost 2 hours, that's just a death sentence for her, so she can't pay for that. And also, it's showing the kind of blasé attitude of people, meaning that people don't really care that this is what's happening to others. So how do I know those things? Well, the close-ups are working there together. She show us the clock, and then we see the close-up of Rachel's face, and she's terrified. She knows what this means. Right? She knows this is going to be, this is her death. This is how she's going to die. And then we have the dialogue and the close-up of the bus driver. He says, well, then you better run. And he's not even looking at her. He looks away from her. So it's really this disconnect. He doesn't care. He sees it. He must see it every day. This is nothing new. This is just the way life is for these people. So it's not shocking. So why is it important that we understand that? Why is it being shown? Well, it's really showing the normalization of this kind of thing, how if people can't afford simple things like bus rides and it's a choice between a bus ride and their own death, those sorts of things, and the choice is taken out of their hands, it shows us that it's devastating for those people, but it's just a regular part of day-to-day life in these areas. So it's nothing unusual. This is just what happens. And then straight after that, we have these point of view shots from Rachel, and we see two of them. So the top left one is when she's still on the bus. She looks down the bus and no one's helping her. And then later on, when she's running, she's screaming at this person to help, but he slams the door on her and runs away from her. So what are these point of view shots showing? Well, they're showing this idea that people don't step up and help. If there's a dire situation, people tend to just stop and watch, or not help when someone really needs help. So how do I know that? Well, the fact that these shots are from Rachel's point of view really puts us in her shoes. So they look on the bus, they look at us, and then they turn away, and this man's running away from us. So it gives us this real sense of helplessness for Rachel, and the fact that nobody's helping her. No one's even interested in thinking about helping her. So why is it important? Why is this being shown in this moment? Well, it's that real idea of the passive bystander, that, first of all, not everyone is responsible for everybody else, but that's the environment that's been created. It's everyone for themselves, basically. People on the bus, because they're in this district, they probably don't have the time to give away. So it's not that they wouldn't want to help, it could be that they can't, or they're waiting for somebody else to help her. And again, it happens every day, it happens all the time, it's just part of normal life. And the man running away from her, he is in this bad area, he might be thinking she's going to hurt her. What it's really addressing is that people have so few options that they just need to look after themselves in these areas, these poorer areas. And then we have these two techniques together, so the cutting shots and the music that's playing over the scene when Will and Rachel are running towards each other. I suggest you pause this video here, and go and listen to that music specifically when they're running towards each other. So we know the cutting is when the camera goes from one character to another and back again, and the music is playing over the background. So what is this sort of showing? What is this cutting and music doing? Well, I think it really presents the sense of hopelessness. There's no hope, there's nothing you can do. The end is kind of, there's no stopping the bad things that are happening in this district. So I've come to that conclusion because how it's being shown, first of all, the cutting, when the camera's going to Will and Rachel, it builds this real tension, because we're thinking, is she going to make it? Is she going to make it? That cutting builds that tension. But the music is incredibly sad. It's not light-hearted. It's not hopeful. It's really sad music. So it's giving us this impression that we want her to make it because of the cutting, but that sadness in that music really shows us already that she's not going to make it. She's not going to reach him because of that sadness of the music. It's not hopeful. It's very sad. So why is that important? Why has the director put the cutting of this kind of intensity mixed with this really sad music? Well, I think it's to really illustrate that the desperation of these people every day is so desperate in these poorer areas. They're constantly fighting, but there's no helping. There's no matter how hard they fight and how much they do, they're never going to get out of that area because the chances just aren't there for them to improve their situations. So it's quite a depressing idea that there's no hope in these areas. No matter how hard you're trying and what you're doing, the outcome is the same. Like, eventually you're going to run out. And we have this long shot as well. So what this long shot, it's right when Rachel dies and Will catches her. What it's really showing is this idea that when these kinds of things happen, they're so normalized that everyone's just sort of alone in their own situations. There's nobody there to help people who need it. And I know that because this is a long shot. If you look around Will and Rachel, you see there's nobody there. There's nobody watching. There's no ambulance coming. There's no one on the street seeing if they can help. No one's looking out their window. Everybody's out for themselves. So Will and Rachel are alone in this moment. There's nothing to do for them. So why is that important? I think it's not really to show that everybody in this district is selfish. Yeah, I think it's more similar to the when Rachel's on the bus and running down the street. That people have to look after themselves because it's such a hard district and a hard time to be living in. So it's just this normalized thing. This is what happens every day. People die in the street all over the place. It's just a part of life, and there's nothing anybody can do to help. There's nothing anybody can do to stop it. And finally, we have this high angle shot, and it is the long shot as well. So this particular shot, it's really showing how hopeless this situation is. How Will has no control over what's happening in his life. His mother's death, it was totally unpreventable. In the events that played out, there was nothing he could have done. So how do I know this? Well, because the camera is positioned in a high angle shot, it's positioned up high. I'm looking down at Will, and he looks very small, very, very small, and really powerless, really weak. Because that's the effect of a high angle shot, is to make the subject look weak or look powerless. So the fact that we see Will in this way shows that he has no power in this situation. He has no control. So why is that important? Well, it really demonstrates that people in these districts and in these areas, when bad things happen to them, which is every day, they have no control over what happens to them, when it happens to them, and when something terrible happens, there's no one there to help. If something bad is going to happen, they just have to watch it happen. There's nothing they can do. So this scene, it is a sad scene. It's a depressing scene, but it's a really good scene to sort of help you discuss this idea of poverty, and how people can't get out of that poverty cycle. There's no choices for them. The system works against them. And also this idea of the passive bystander, so people seeing what's going on but not being able to help or not willing to help because of their own situation. So remember, now that we've finished the analysis, take some time to think and write down how the scene and what specific elements of the scene you could use to construct an argument based on one of our ideas: poverty, inequality, natural selection, passive bystander, corruption. Any of those ideas, make sure you're thinking specifically about how this scene can help you develop an argument for those ideas.